Bruce Blakeman isn't afraid to push the edge of the envelope as he rules one of the most affluent areas of New York as Nassau County executive. The Point starts right now. Nassau County Executive Bruce Blakeman is certainly not afraid to take controversial stands. So we're going to start with asking you some controversial questions. First of all, there's been college protests all over New York City, actually from coast to coast, about what's going on in Israel and Gaza. You have a lot of colleges in Nassau. I wonder if there are protests and tent cities that break out at the colleges in your county. Would you call in the Nassau County cops, the state police, or even the National Guard to stop it?
Well, first of all, these protesters, by and large, are professional protesters. They're funded by groups that are anti-American. They have ties to the Communist Party. And some students who really are uninformed join them because it's a thing to do. They have come out to Nassau County. They have tried to protest, and we allow them to exercise their right to free speech. But unlike other places, we tell them, you stay on the sidewalk, you're fine. Exercise your right to free speech. You step off the sidewalk, our police officers will ask you politely to get back on the sidewalk. If you do not, you will be arrested. Protest is fine. Turning into a riot, occupying government buildings or university buildings, harassing, intimidating students, being violent, those are things that I will not tolerate in Nassau County.
So there's been a raging debate about whether anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism or anti-Semitism is anti-Zionism. Where do you come down on that?
Well, I believe that most anti-Zionism is anti-Semitism. When people criticize Israel, which is a democracy, people of all lifestyles live there, people of all races and religions live there. They live in freedom. They get to vote. They have human rights. They have a very dignified judiciary system. They have all the things that you would want, like America. And they are always singled out. I mean, thousands of people were killed in Haiti the same week that maybe 100 people died in Gaza, 100 fighters died in Gaza, yet the headlines are all about Israel. I believe that there is an anti-Israel bias, and I believe it is grounded in anti-Semitism.
Why do you think there is an anti-Israel bias? I mean, is it just something that traditionally over time people blame people of Jewish religion?
Well, I think that basically the anti-Semitism that you see now is because we have allowed our schools and our universities to indoctrinate our children as students to be anti-Semitic, and I think that they perpetrate lies about Jewish people, lies about Israel, and we've been too passive in fighting that. And I think now we realize that we should have been a lot stronger, and you're starting to see pushback now, and I think that that's very healthy.
Bruce, what has to change?
What has to change is the progressive liberal wing of the Democratic Party that associates itself with socialists and communists who are not just anti-Israel, not just anti-Semitic, they're anti-religion. And their anti-American values. We've got to stop funding them. We've got to push back, and we've got to rout them out of our universities and our schools because they're poisoning our children.
So should there be changes? Should there be new courses in elementary school and junior high and high school that teach about the Jewish people and Jewish history?
Well, I think we should teach about all people, and I think that it should be a fair evaluation. That's what history should be about. But what they should not teach are anti-Semitic tropes and biases that exist with certain professors and certain teachers. And I think the federal government has to get serious and state government have to get serious about not funding these institutions.
So you've come under a fair amount of criticism because you want to deputize citizens to help the Nassau County Police in times of emergencies. I wonder why you want to do this and why you think citizens should be coming to the aid of the police force.
Well, the people who are criticizing me either don't understand what I'm doing, or they're just looking for a way to oppose me because they're from a different political ideology. So first of all, what I'm doing has been going on in Westchester for years. Basically, under the law, if there is an extreme emergency, a county executive or a mayor, or if it's upstate, a sheriff, has the right to deputize people to protect property and to protect human life. And what I'm doing is only creating a database and a list of people, A, who would be willing to serve, and B, who are qualified. And on that list that I have compiled are primarily military veterans and retired law enforcement. I have NYPD inspectors, I've got Marines, I've got Nassau County Police Department officers who want to give back to the community. They would have no power whatsoever unless I declared an emergency. And if there is an emergency, Marcia, do I want to be in a situation where I'm calling people to help and they haven't been vetted and they haven't been trained and they haven't had background checks done? So I'm just creating a list in a database. I haven't done anything more than that.
So how would you qualify to be on the list, and does that person have to be armed? Does that person have to have a gun permit?
Yes. First of all, they have to be licensed. So my critics say, well, these people have guns anyway. So, I mean, that's a ridiculous criticism. So they would have a license. They would have to go through an extensive background check. They would have to be trained in the law on use of force. And by the way, if I were going to use them, it wouldn't be for normal police functions. It would be to protect infrastructure like power plants, like hospitals, like churches, mosques, synagogues, like governmental buildings.
But what kind of an emergency would justify that?
So as we saw in Superstorm Sandy, and as we saw in the terrible snowstorms up in Erie County was paralyzed for about 3 weeks. Their first responders couldn't get to work, and it was a complete mess. And I lived through Superstorm Sandy. I was actually in the New York State Guard at the time, which is, New York State has a militia. A lot of people don't know that. And we were activated, and I toured the areas along Long Island South Shore to places like Long Beach and Oceanside and Island Park and Massapequa, and they were devastated, and they had no police protection. They had no fire protection. So that was a circumstance where we could have used a little help. And by the way, I wouldn't do this unless I first called on our firefighters and our police officers, all hands on deck, and then I realized I needed a little help. And again, these are volunteers. They have a military background or a law enforcement background, or they're private investigators. They're already trained. They're willing to give back. But the Democrats in the county legislature called them brown shirts, which is anti-Semitic, and I think it's absolutely...
What's a comparison to Nazi Germany?
To Nazi stormtroopers. I mean, how could they possibly do that? And they still haven't retracted it or apologized. They are calling people who served in the NYPD, the Nassau County Police Department, the Marine Corps, the United States Army, the Air Force. They're calling them brown shirts, Nazi stormtroopers. I still haven't gotten an apology from them.
We have about a minute left, but I wanted to ask you what your take is on the state's rollout of the cannabis stores, which has given rise to so many illegal stores, you can't even count them.
I think it's a very, very big mistake legalizing marijuana. I've said it. When the American Association of Pediatricians and the Mental Health Association all say that it's a big mistake, I'm in favor of medical marijuana because it's under the supervision of a doctor. But recreational marijuana, there are no pluses. There's only minuses. There's psychosis, schizophrenia, all kinds of illnesses associated. And why would we want to do that to our young people?
So you don't think the state did a good job?
I think they've done a terrible job.
Okay, and on that note, we're going to have to leave it right there. But our conversation continues right after the show on our streaming channel, CBS News New York. I'm joined now by lawyer and political expert J.C. Polanco and Harry Siegel, a columnist and senior editor of The City. So, guys, we have to start out by talking about the fact that war seems to have broken out between the mayor and the city council. The city council has asked for an investigation of the social media post by the NYPD, and the mayor responded by demanding an investigation of Lincoln Wrestler, who made some rather caustic remarks at a city council hearing, and that's added to the fact that the council doesn't like the mayor's choice for corporation counsel, Randy Mastro. What is going on between these two groups of government? Harry.
City council wants to be a co-equal branch of government. The NYPD is doing bonkers tweets and a public messaging approach that they're saying, let's soberly talk about this, and the mayor's laughing at them. And with his NYPD, the people who are doing these tweets are not at this hearing. The milk carton commissioner is there, isn't saying anything about them. There's this space. The mayor seems eager to have this battle as he's turning into re-election mode, and the council's figuring out what leverage they have, but I don't think they're there yet.
Yeah, but isn't this a bad time to have a battle? We're like just 2 months away from having to have a budget agreement. It's not exactly the most opportune time to try to take out your meat axe and go after each other.
Right, well, you know what? This is nothing new. The mayor and the city council have not gotten along for a very long time, and we know why.
Yeah, but this is really beyond.
I know, but this is not. And here we have one of the main folks responsible for a lot of this. Yes, Mr. Siegel, we're attacking the NYPD, well, exposing or discussing the NYPD, and the NYPD coming back at this very popular journalist may have been a mistake across the city, because you actually started something, right? The fact that the NYPD has targeted your columns and and you have a lot of support from across the Twitter universe. But the interesting thing is this: the mayor is in a position where he wants to show that he supports his NYPD. The city council has shown repeatedly that they don't want to work with this mayor. At every single opportunity, there's been resistance. And I think a lot of it has to do with the fact, Marcia, that the mayor is a centrist and the city council is increasingly very, very progressive. And there's an ideological divide between these two, and we're seeing it boil over.
But let's talk about the fact that the NYPD, which is not a political organization, is sending out social media posts dealing with politics. And the question is that the right role for people in the NYPD to adopt?
No, that's an easy one. But their view, Mayor Adams' view, let's be clear, is I'm at 28%. We've got a presidential election coming up, and my primary for re-election just 7.5 months after that. He needs to turn something around. And I think with the Columbia stuff, without getting too deep into that, the NYPD blocked journalists from these scenes as they're clearing encampments and so on. Then they're putting out their own awesome action videos with soundtracks and cool shots. They've got these chiefs hoisting the flag themselves and then putting it out there. It's on the cover of the Post the next day. They think there's some space for advantage. And always with Adams, I don't know how far left the council is. What I do know is the mayor is politically aligned with the center of New York. The question is what he can get done, and he's got really limited time to turn it out. These are his people, the crew he's danced with, and he's doubling down on, and he's going to see where this takes him. He's at 28%. He's got to go up to recover, and he's running short on time to do that.
Is this a winning strategy?
Well, Marcia, look, the written word is political. Everything is political. So when you say that the NYPD is getting political, I mean, everything we do is political. That's a fact. And Harry, you're a very popular journalist, so let's be honest here. That when the NYPD reads something that they don't like, we've moved to a place now, Marcia, where it's not just let's be cordial about it. Let me call Harry on the phone and let him know how I feel. We've seen through President Trump that Twitter or X is where folks are going to do their battle. They're going to do their mano a mano on X, and that's what we saw. Now, unfortunately, it seems like it's out of what we're used to from the NYPD. But it seems to be the modern way of communicating. I'm sorry.
It may be what we're not used to, but is it acceptable?
Well, that's an interesting position. I don't think that they should get dirty with folks and journalists. I think they should stay above the fray. But what you have now is a desperation of who's going to tell our story, and that's where I think this mayor needs to work on. His communications team has to get on with it, and so does the NYPD. They shouldn't have to go mano a mano with Harry. They should have a team ready to discuss the facts.
But they're not.
And that's where they dropped the ball.
They're not only going after you, but they're going after politicians that they don't agree with, like AOC. like Tiffany Caban.
Well, come on, Marcia, but these politicians that you just mentioned, that's not Harry. Those politicians are constantly coming after the NYPD on many levels, even talking about the integrity of the individual officers. So at some point, the NYPD has to defend
So
themselves.
you're saying it's okay to go after politicians, for the NYPD to go after politicians?
I don't think it's fine for the NYPD to go after politicians. I said it's okay for the NYPD to defend its officers when they're being attacked. And quite frankly, if you look at the record from the politicians that you've mentioned, it's been very clear. They're anti-NYPD every single time. It's never anything fair when it comes to how they treat the NYPD. So I'm talking about defending the NYPD is one thing and its officers, but you're talking about getting political into the... That's very different.
So, Harry, is there a dichotomy here that it's okay to go after politicians who criticize the NYPD? It's not okay to go after you and other journalists for their opinions? Or is both of those things not acceptable?
That's up to the voters, and that's up to the lawmakers at a certain point. And the DOI is now looking into this at the city council's request, and people will decide how they feel about it. I think the NYPD is squandering a ton of trust, and I think that these stop-clock politicians who are constantly bashing the NYPD, no doubt, the NYPD bosses are making their point. We have a chief of department who's about to go on trial for abusing his authority, who was appointed to that role after he previously abused his authority. And if Tiffany Caban brings that up, even if she's a stop clock, that's a serious thing. That's new, it's ugly, and this is the crew that now is getting very loud and very aggressive with representatives of the public, like politicians and journalists. I don't think it's wise. It's not for me to say if it's acceptable.
So let's change topics. The schools chancellor was in Washington this past week defending the way the schools have dealt with protests against what's going on in the Middle East and also what they're doing about anti-Semitism. Are the New York City schools doing enough to deal with anti-Semitism, and how are they responding to the protests that we've seen?
The schools are working hard on this. Banks, our chancellor, and the other officials who were there from two other systems, they got through this test. They didn't get nailed like the college presidents did. They weren't worried the same ways. And people aren't angry at the public schools the way they're angry at the ivory tower. With all that said, this is like a real challenge right now. What they don't want is a constant drumbeat of post headlines, of really distressing incidents and news coverage, of individual stories that point to broader problems. But it's a huge system, and I'm hoping that this is a moment for some reassessment of how we're handling all this and issues of hate. But frankly, I have some doubts about that within the public schools, and more generally, I think there has been a shift over the last decade, really, going back to de Blasio, from sort of teaching facts to teaching feelings. And I think that's opened the door to a lot of this, and you can see New York trying to correct now, and I applaud them for that, but I'm not sure they're all the way there.
Well, I think that the chancellor did a great job answering the questions regarding what are they doing about anti-Semitism, talking about the process by which there's going to be repercussions if there's anti-Semitism in the New York City public schools. Is it going to be perfect? Absolutely not. But Chancellor Banks held his own, as opposed to what we've seen from presidents of university that crumble under pressure, that don't tell you what anti-Semitism is, even if you show them anti-Semitism. They just won't admit to what's wrong. But Chancellor Banks, I think, did a great job. And you covered a great job, Marcia.
Should the city be doing more? We have about 30 seconds left.
I think the city has to do a lot more to make sure that we are not anti-Semitic, and to make sure that there's a real difference. I know you had it in your earlier conversation between the issues of the Israeli government and our Jewish brothers and sisters in New York City. And too often these protesters, especially the professional ones, are muddying the waters, and they're hurting a lot of people in New York City with their positions.
Is anti-Semitism equal to anti-Zionism? 15 seconds.
Wow. No, but there's obviously overlap between them at tons of specific points, and the school system has to be broad, public, and a place where kids of all sorts of backgrounds can be comfortable and get a solid education.
And on that note, we'll have to leave it there for right now, but we'll be right back. Thank you for joining me. Protests against the Israel-Hamas war have rocked college campuses from coast to coast. Some New Yorkers support them, some don't, and they're weighing in on your point. I'm wondering how you feel about the campus demonstrations that are going on right now.
Well, I have mixed feelings.
It's complicated, but I think that when you're in college, that's what you do.
What are they doing the protests for?
I think the protests are important to draw attention to the suffering of the people in Gaza.
Oh gosh. I mean, I
appreciate young people and Gen Z standing up for what they believe in.
I think protests are useless.
Oh, I don't know. What they protesting about?
Peaceful protest is welcome in most situations, but it seems like it's getting a little bit out of control.
I think they should be more inclusive of Jewish rights and compassion for Jewish people.
I am disturbed about the police being called in, but then again, if it gets violent, if the students get violent, then I think they have to be controlled.
Have you ever participated in any kind of a protest?
Yeah.
I have, yes.
Oh, yes. Yes, in the 60s, I'm afraid.
When I was much younger, yes.
I don't like being arrested, no.
No, I'm too scared.
How come?
I don't know, because they get crazy.
What did you protest?
The Vietnam War.
Black Lives Matter, pro-Palestine,
abortion rights, anti-war when I was a kid. I'm older now, so yeah, I've done my share of protesting, but I think that period's over.
I'm alumnus of Columbia College, class of '82. We protested apartheid. We never occupied the lawn. We never alienated white South Africans.
Why do you think New York has so many demonstrations?
I think the people in New York are bored, and they're always trying to find something.
There's always something going on, and there's such diversity, so there's always people that believe different things going on here.
It's a very informed population, and they care about issues.
We're the heart of the beast. We're the belly of the beast.
Well, it's like contagious, isn't it? You know, I mean, it's just the nature of it.
So do you think that the present campus protest will accomplish anything?
I hope so.
Well, I don't know. I doubt it.
I'm not sure. I think that, if anything, it's spreading the word.
Yes.
What?
It's going to give people something to do with their boring lives. What?
No.
Why not?
I don't think that the people who are in the demonstrations actually know what they're demonstrating.
Do you think that these protests will accomplish anything?
Yes. I think they're going to heighten awareness, and hopefully there's an Arab-Israeli member of the Knesset that would be the new Nelson Mandela uniting all his or her people.